Hey curators, welcome back to my channel where I like to talk about primarily knitting, spinning, and the fiber arts. Today's going to be a quick little mini episode in which I go over my most recent finished make, which is the Poet Sweater, an absolutely gorgeous pattern by Sari Nordlund. So if you're a regular viewer of the podcast, you will recognize this. If you're interested in knitting this pattern, then stick around because I am going to go over how this garment is constructed, as well as issues or problems that I encountered along the way of knitting this pattern. And as always, if you guys liked today's video or any in the past, feel free to hit that thumbs up button down below and subscribe if you're not already subscribed to stay up to date to content here on my channel. If you would like to follow me on social media, I am the Yarn Curator over on Instagram, where I am most active, albeit not that active, as well as on Ravelry if you're still able to use that platform. I am House of Cardigans if you want to connect and be friends over there. So without further ado, I am going to jump into the nitty-gritty details of the Poet Sweater. So for this pattern, I knit this out of Bishi Bouche in their Les Petites Lambs wool base in the turquoise colorway. It is a woolen spun yarn that is milled in Scotland by a family-owned fiber mill. The yarn is just absolutely delicious. It's not a superwash wool, so it's going to be a little bit more rustic, toothy. It does have a little bit of a scratch to it, so if you're sensitive to that, might not be the yarn for you. The only place I'm ever usually sensitive to that is in my elbows, kind of right here in the crook. And it's one of those yarns where after you've been wearing it for a while, you don't really notice that toothiness after a while. You kind of just get used to it. Now, why I'm saying this yarn is so great for this pattern is because since it's a woolen spun, you really get a lot of bang for your buck in terms of yardage. So this 50 gram ball is 248 meters or 270 yards, which is incredible because if you think about a normal worsted spun superwash fingering weight skein, that's about 100 yards. Depending on how thick or thin it's been milled, you get anywhere between 400 to 450 yards. So with this, if two balls, which would give you 100 grams, are that equivalent, you're gonna get 540 yards, between the two. I only had to use three and a half balls of this yarn. Each of these hanks retails for $12.75 in the US at least. So I was able to knit this sweater for roughly $50. If you are a knitter on a budget, I can't recommend this yarn enough. It does require a little bit of extra care than a superwash yarn, but I think it's totally worth it. For this pattern, I did knit it as gauge called for, so on US size 4 or 3.5 millimeter needles, and I did not have the recommended needle size for the ribbing, which I believe was a US 1.5. I don't know. I used a US size 2 for all the ribbing, and it's worked out beautifully. All right, now let's get down to how this pattern is constructed. This is a top-down raglan, which means you work the increases along the shoulder line here, and you are increasing while working the lace chart on the body panels, and then you are also adding in your sleeve stitches on the arms. And this pattern features this lace motif on both the front and the back. And so you are knitting lace the entire time. There's not really traditional rest rows like in some other lace garments that I've knit. It's a rest row in this pattern includes seed stitch. So you'll work your lace row, and then the next row you will primarily knit, but there are some purls involved, because in between these sections, it features a nice delicate seed stitch pattern. When you are working kind of this first section, I kind of approach garments in thirds. So the first third, if you're working it top down, is, your neckline to your sleeve divide. The second third is then the body, and then the final third are your sleeves. So the first third of this project is quite challenging. I'm not gonna lie, you really have to pay attention. Throughout this entire pattern, I actually had to write out the chart repeat. It's a 48 row chart repeat, and I wrote out 1 through 48 on a piece of scrap paper, and I put a little hash mark next to it every time I finished a row. That's how I kept up with where I was on the chart. And I'm not gonna lie, I've worked on this pattern for 7 months off and on, and sometimes it would go 2 months without being touched. So having that little cheat sheet in my project bag was really useful for picking it back up again when I felt motivated enough to work on this project. So as I mentioned, you're working your chart and repeating. When you finish the chart, at least for my size, which is the size large, and you divide the sleeves, you've knit roughly 1.5 repeats of the pattern. And this is a minor complaint I have about the chart. I think it would intimidate someone who doesn't have as much experience knitting from charts. So the way the pattern is presented to you on the chart, it's the page that includes the chart shows all of the increases for working this raglan. The pattern repeat itself is 48 rows, but you work 68 rows to get your raglan increase. So after you finish the 48th row, you continue up through the chart, working those 20 more rows that work these extra increases. However, if you're not paying attention to the red bounding box demarking the pattern repeat, you could get confused where you are on the chart, because row 49 of this increase section picks up row 1 of the pattern repeat. So when I knit this, I worked the chart all the way through row 68, and then I had to count, the difference in 20 rows, and then I had to pick up at row, 20 on the stitch repeat, if that makes sense. So instead of finishing the chart and starting on row 1 of the chart again, I knew that I was really 20 rows into this repeat. So that's one thing to be aware of. Another is when you divide your sleeves, you're merging the two charts. You're working for the front and the back. So that's another fun thing about this pattern. The way this pattern is worked is you cast on and you work the first 10 or so rows flat, and that's how you work the shoulder shaping in the back of the pattern, so it sits a little higher. But what that means is this back portion of the sweater is 10 rows ahead of the stitch repeat here on the chart. So until you divide for your underarm sleeves, you're working 2 different charts for this pattern. And when you divide the sleeves, you have to merge the 2 charts, and then you just work from 1 chart. At least that's how it was for the size large. I'm not sure if it's the same for the other pattern sizes, so I'm sorry. So after you merge your 2 charts, you kind of have to figure out where that merge takes place. So for me, I noticed that the end of row or the beginning of row was smack dab in the middle of chart A. So what I did was I counted back the number of stitches in a full repeat, and I just moved my beginning of round to there. It was way easier than trying to work a half a repeat through half of the body. And really no one at the end of the day is going to be able to tell. I can't even tell where it started and ended, so no big deal. That is not explicitly said in the pattern, and it took me about 4 hours one morning of staring at my knitting, reading the pattern, staring at my knitting, reading Ravelry project notes, staring at my knitting some more, rereading the pattern, and just really thinking through that process. If you're knitting this, I hope that helps you, and knowing that you might have to shift that end or beginning of round marker so your repeats line up. And since I shifted that marker, I then had to shift either half or all of the stitch markers I used, because I demarcated each repeat with a set of markers. So every 20 stitches, I had a stitch marker, which let me know pretty easily and visually if I had made a mistake. I could see it right there in that section instead of having to tink back an entire row. So that's kind of how the pattern is constructed, and a little heads up about the charts. Overall, I think it's a really nice pattern. I know from reading comments on Ravelry that other individuals, especially those who bought the physical copy of Lina magazine, which is what this was originally published in, had a lot of issues with it and being able to update their physical copy of the pattern versus the errata and mistakes that have been fixed over time. However, it is available for purchase as an individual download. It's about $9.50 US, €8, and that digital download does include all the updates and corrections, so that is nice. Overall, I am really, really pleased with this pattern, not just because it's like a beautiful work of art, but because it's the first time that I've really felt challenged by my knitting in a long time. I know there was one point in the beginning when I was working this, and you know, the lace sections just looked like disformed blobs on my knitting, and I couldn't really see it, and I wasn't getting the gratification of seeing the project grow before my eyes. And I was like, you know what, this is dumb. I'm just gonna walk away from this project. It's clearly above my skill level. I don't have the patience or the time to dedicate to this. I'm not gonna spend the next 7 months carving out the little blocks of time that I need to really sink my teeth into this pattern. And it would have been really easy to give in to the doubts and the naysaying in the back of my mind, but instead I stubbornly, it's a family trait, I'm incredibly stubborn, just persisted through, and I'm really happy I did, because it feels good to know that I can tackle something this complex. It feels good to know that I can finish something this complex and not let the fact that it's going to take me 7 months be a deterrent to making. I think with us in our craft, oftentimes we look for instant gratification, or we need those instant gratification projects because, you know, it's nice to feel like you're producing something or being productive. But at the same time, it's also nice to get lost in stitches and tune out the world and really just be absorbed in the process of making, and, you know, not think about the end product. So for me, this has been a really great project for spending time being reflective, for growing as a knitter, for just knowing I can do something of this caliber. And I know I've talked to a few other people who comment regularly on the challenge. A few people have said, oh, I'm only making my first sweater. I would love to make something like that. Or do you think I can tackle, you know, this project that has an all over cable? The answer is yes. You absolutely 100% can do it. Before I knit my first garment, probably 7 years ago now, I used to be so scared of trying things outside of my comfort zone. And I love making garments so much. I'm so happy I took the plunge finally to make a garment, because that's truly my happy spot as a knitter. And until I removed that fear and I was willing to take the plunge into making something different, I couldn't find that joy. So try something new, challenge yourself. You might find it's something you love, and you've been holding yourself back from that because you're in your own head. So don't let that be a deterrent, is all I'm trying to say. So with that, I thought it would be a fun way to finish this video to show you guys how I like to style my knits. And so I'm going to show you 2 or 3 different looks. One is going to be how I would wear this to work because I do think it's nice enough and dressy enough where I can dress it up or dress it down for a more casual look. And so yeah, without further ado, we'll jump to that. So for outfit number 1, you guys, this is how I would dress casually on a lighter day to work. For me, my regular wardrobe is my work wardrobe, and I'm incredibly lucky to work somewhere that's a little bit more casual. Now, when I would be wearing this outfit, it's normally in the winter time, so I would probably be wearing leggings with this dress, which I showed at the beginning. But it's summertime in Florida, so for the purposes of this video, the leggings did not make it on, but with a little bit of advice from Willy Wonka, A World of Your Imagination, you can imagine those leggings on right now. Instead, I have opted for Spanx because Florida. So yeah, I paired this with a nice lightweight dress, my sweater, and a favorite pair of Keds that are a mashup with Rifle Paper Co. and pick up that blue. As you can tell, I'm quite happy with it. For outfit number 2, this is for a more professional day at work, and I have paired it with a pair of chocolate brown tweedy slacks, which I absolutely love and wear the heck out of them when it is a little bit colder. These are great for days when I need to meet with donors or I'm interfacing with other people within my professional organization, and I just need to look a little bit more put together than I usually do. However, I think the color of the pants matches the blue tones in the sweater and they complement each other, and I've paired this outfit with just a pair of clogs to tie it all together. But overall, I am really pleased. I really like it and I couldn't be happier. And if you guys enjoyed this video, I'd love to see you leave a comment, hit that thumbs up, and if you're not already subscribed, please do consider subscribing. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys later. Until next time, I hope you enjoy your making or whatever you're working on that brings you joy. Bye!